Hello everyone, and this is my review for WWE Friday Night Smackdown on November 16th, 2012. And basically, for the most part, this Smackdown, of course, is the go-home Smackdown to Survivor Series. And a lot of the focus on this Smackdown was based around the Survivor Series tag team match, the Team Ziggler versus Team Foley. You have three different matches focusing on this storyline, which I felt like they did a very good job throughout the show, especially in the tag match with Randy Orton and Miz versus Alberto Del Rio and Dolph Ziggler. The dysfunction between the two teams at this point, pretty much the dysfunction between the whole team of Team Foley and the dysfunction between Alberto Del Rio and Dolph Ziggler on the Team Ziggler side. They definitely insinuated this and made it feel like pretty much this entire match will be, it's almost like how will both of these teams actually work together going into the pay-per-view match. Also, will Cody Rhodes even be there? He did get injured on the Wednesday night main event show. It is actually highly unlikely that he will appear in the match and maybe be replaced by somebody else at some point in time. But like I said, I feel like they did a very good job of, the matches themselves were very good. The Damian Sandow and Kofi Kingston match came across very well, and both of them worked extremely well together. Obviously, the Wade Barrett and Kane match never really got going because they brought out Team Ziggler immediately attacked Kane afterwards, which brought out Team Foley to chase them off, and then of course basically Miz coming out afterwards and just standing there holding his head because he had gotten RKO'd by Randy Orton earlier in the evening after the match. And it still at that point it still showed dysfunction between at least Team Foley, and it seemed like Team Ziggler had worked out what they were doing and going into the actual pay-per-view. So it seemed like Team Ziggler was at the advantage over Team Foley at this point in time. And like I said, I feel like they did a very good job insinuating that particular match that needed a little bit more focus, especially with all the changes that happened going into the pay-per-view itself. Initially it was Team Punk versus Team Foley. Now they had taken Punk out of the equation on that team. They also took Miz out of that team and then put him over on the Team Foley side, and they took Ryback out of Team Foley side, and now they have that triple threat match going into the pay-per-view for the WWE title at that point. So the Survivor Series elimination match definitely needed a lot more focus, and I felt like this was probably the best that they've done with that match since all the changes that happened. They put a lot of focus onto it in this one show. It came off to me really good, and yeah, it definitely got me a little bit more back into that match versus where I was standing on that match, going into the pay-per-view itself. The other main interaction to the show was Sheamus and the Big Show, which, well, before I get to that, there were a couple other smaller matches on the show. You had like a Six Divas tag match, and you had a few other segments involving other people. But the main part of the show, and going into the final portion of the show, was the interaction between Sheamus and Big Show, which in my mind was extremely good in my point of view. It started out with Sheamus basically in the parking lot, waiting on Big Show to come in there. You had Booker T come in there to try to talk Sheamus down. Eventually Sheamus leaves the parking lot, goes out to the ring, calls out Big Show. Big Show, of course, shows up. And obviously the interaction between Booker T at that point, trying to get Sheamus to leave, trying to get him to wait, going into the actual pay-per-view match versus having the fight now. I ended up liking that a lot. Also, the interaction between Big Show and not Big Show and Sheamus, Big Show and Booker T backstage afterwards, thinking that Big Show was thinking Booker T was on his side, but no, not really. He was kind of just doing his own thing there, putting Big Show into a match with Great Khali later in the evening. That match, well, it was what it was at that point in time. But after the match, again, Sheamus comes out and attacks Big Show, and I don't believe any consequences were. Booker T had told Sheamus that there would be consequences if things got out of control. So we'll see if there's any repercussions going into the pay-per-view or at a later point in time. But like I said, I felt like the interaction between Sheamus and Big Show going into their world title match tonight, especially adding the Booker T element into there, it came off really well in my mind and made the show a little bit better in that point in time, and a little bit better at that point in time. So overall, I felt the show itself, it only really focused on two main areas of the pay-per-view, but it did it really well. You didn't get bombarded by a bunch of different areas of everything going into the pay-per-view, like a bunch of different storylines. You had a very good focal point on two major storylines going into the pay-per-view, and it really came off well in my mind. So that's my review for WWE Smackdown this week. I thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.